Man, I can't wait to talk about my favorite samurai action game released on a PlayStation console within the 21st century. It's Onimusha, you guys! What did you think I was talking about?
2001 was an incredibly important year in human history, with so many important moments. The first Gorillaz album, the first Shrek movie, the discovery of a 40-foot-long fossil of an ancient crocodile named Super Croc. I'm pretty sure there weren't any other important events that happened in 2001, particularly in America.
Except, number one, I was born, that's very important, and number two, a little game called Onimusha was released on the PlayStation 2.
2026 marks the 25th anniversary of the first Onimusha game. Yes, it has been 25 years since 2001. Start digging your graves now. This first game spawned a franchise that lasted the entire PS2 generation, only to be forgotten by time, doomed to only be enjoyed by turbo nerds like me, who like playing games that came out before they were even born. However, that seems poised to change. Not only has Capcom released ports of the first two Onimusha games to modern consoles, they've also announced a new game, Onimusha Way of the Sword, releasing this year to the excitement of
probably only me. So let's talk about this forgotten first game for no particular reason other than that I just think it's kinda cool.
It's 1998 and Capcom is on top of the gaming world. For the past 10 years, they'd been putting out hit after Cadillacs and dinosaurs after hit. But one of their greatest successes during this time was the one, the only, Resident Evil. Resident Evil, while not being the first survival horror game, was certainly the one that popularized the genre. You play as one of two members of an elite special forces unit sent to an abandoned mansion on a mission where basically your entire team gets horrifically murdered in increasingly brutal, violent, gory ways.
I feel like I don't really need to explain what Resident Evil is to you. You already know what these games are, and you've probably played at least one of them, unless you're a true skibbity brain rot phantom tats kind of person, in which case you're probably too young to be watching this video right now.
The Resident Evil series went on to sell millions of copies and produce multiple sequels and spin-offs just on the PlayStation alone. From this success came another series, Dino Crisis, where Resident Evil was a third-person game with tank controls set in a creepy location with zombies. Dino Crisis was a third-person game with tank controls set in a creepy location with dinosaurs.
How innovative.
So what's the logical next step after zombies and dinosaurs? Well, pirates, of course. But then ninjas! Samurai! The glory of Nippon! That was presumably the thought process of one Yoshiki Okamoto when he came up with the idea to create a Resident Evil game that was set in a ninja mansion filled to the brim with traps and obstacles to overcome. This game was set to be released on the Nintendo 64 disk drive add-on, and if you know anything about the history of the 64DD, you can guess how that went. Eventually, the project was moved to the PlayStation and evolved into what we now know as Onimusha. Yeah, this game was originally a PS1 game, and let's just say, you can tell! At some point, the PlayStation 1 version was cancelled and worked into the PlayStation 2 game we all know today. All of us know this game.
Definitely all of us know what this game is, right?
Let's jump right in and talk about the plot. I say plot in massive air quotes because I have to admit there's not a whole lot going on here, but regardless. You play as Samanosuke, a samurai in Sengoku period Japan. He receives a letter from his cousin, Princess Yuki of the Saito clan. She requests his help to solve the mystery of why her servants keep disappearing, and she believes monsters may be the culprits. Now, I gotta admit, if my cousin sent me a letter out of nowhere stating that monsters had kidnapped everyone at her house, I would probably stay as far away as humanly possible, but that's why I'm not Samanosuke. He arrives at Inabayama Castle to find the place overrun with demons, at least according to the English localization, who proceed to kill him. The end. No, I'm kidding. Instead, Samanosuke is visited by the ogre spirits, who grant him the power of a gauntlet that absorbs the souls of
Okay, I'm just gonna call them Genma. That's what they're called in Japanese, and that's what they're called for the entire rest of the series. Got it? Great.
Anyway, yes. Samanosuke gains the ability to become stronger by absorbing the souls of demons. The rest of the game follows Samanosuke as he explores the castle and faces off against the fearsome demons who await him inside. There's an entire library of classic characters, like Big Red Hammer Guy, the lady with bugs in her coochie, and my favorite, Guildenstern, the mad scientist Genma who sounds like Skeletor and creates all kinds of horrific creatures that are inexplicably named after Hamlet characters.
Go, Ronaldo! Bite the belly of that maggot and feast upon his bloody flesh!
Hey, you can't knock the guy for being well read, alright?
As the game progresses, you discover that Oda Nobunaga, yes, the real-life guy Oda Nobunaga, has been resurrected by the Genma. The Genma, led by this big snake f***er named Fortinbras, kidnapped Princess Yuki so they could steal her blood, have Nobunaga drink it, and turn him into an incredibly strong Genma who could destroy the entire Saito clan. Now, obviously we can't have this roided up zombie man running around Japan, so it becomes Samanosuke's quest to defeat Fortinbras, stop Nobunaga, and save Princess Yuki. Side note, but poor Nobunaga, man. Imagine showing up in a bunch of anime and video games years after you die and constantly being portrayed as a mass-murdering demonic psycho. It would be like if Americans made George Washington into a bad guy. Oh wait, we did do that.
Oops.
And that's really all I have to say about Onimusha's plot. This game is not going to win any writing awards anytime soon, but I don't really think it was trying to in the first place. This game's story and writing, more than anything, remind me of an old samurai movie. But like, a really bad one. Seven Samurai, this ain't. But at the same time, there's something comforting about a simple plot of good guys versus bad guys. Just like those old samurai movies, it's nice to be able to enjoy the story for what it is. Like being wrapped up in a warm blanket on a cold day.
Or something like that.
The characters all also have the personality of cardboard. Samanosuke is your generic heroic guy, quite literally trying to save the princess in a castle. He doesn't have anything resembling an arc beyond going from a no-name samurai to becoming the next Onimusha at the very end of the game. Which, admittedly, is a sick as f*** scene, but that's about the only really cool stuff he gets to do. Otherwise, he's just kind of a goober, especially in the dub.
You! Why don't you go back to playing with your worthless little toys? I have no time for you!
Then Kaide...
Wait a minute! I didn't even talk about Kaide during the story section!
Kaide is the second playable main character who you get to play as a grand total of 2 times. Well, yeah, I forgot to write her into the script because her character is almost nothing. She exists just to rescue Samanosuke from sticky situations, say his name in a shocked tone, and that's about it. I think she's only in this game to break up the gameplay and to look hot. Hey, her ass is so fat that it clips through her dress in one cutscene. Honestly, goals. If that wasn't bad enough, she dies off screen at the very end of the game and is never mentioned again in any of the sequels besides the weird Smash Brothers ripoff.
Man, poor Kaide. She deserved better.
I will say that the bad guys in this game are consistently very entertaining. Well, okay, one of them is. Every time Guildenstern opens his mouth, I feel like dying of laughter. There's something about this otherwise very serious game having this insane Skeletor dude screeching the most hammy dialogue ever that makes some part of me very, very happy.
A human? How disappointing.
Apart from him, though, these are just your generic evil demon villain characters. Fortinbras is barely in the game, and he doesn't really make much of an impact while he's there.
Nobunaga is in a grand total of 2 cutscenes, doesn't talk, and you don't even get to fight him. Okay.
Who else even is there? Yumimaru, he's just a generic, annoying little kid character. Oh yes, Tokichiro! The guy who I only find interesting because they randomly dropped this tidbit in the middle of his introduction.
My name is Tokichiro Kinoshita.
This man will eventually conquer the world under the name Hideyoshi Toyotomi.
Alright. Thanks, Capcom. I guess.
I think you get the point by now. This game is not aiming to be the next beautiful masterpiece of Shakespearean writing by any means. However, at the very least, I can't say there's any writing in this game that sticks out as outright aggravating.
It's total gaming comfort food, and as someone who really enjoys eating way too much junk food, there is nothing wrong with that. Besides, I'm really here for the gameplay anyway.
If you've played a classic Resident Evil game, you pretty much know what you're getting into here. The basic gameplay consists of running around a large interconnected map filled with puzzles, traps, and Genma trying to kill you. As you explore, you'll come across all sorts of treasure and useful items, such as charms that increase your life and magic meters, as well as new weapons and items that provide utility, like a necklace that lets you talk to ghosts to receive hints. Killing enemies also grants you souls that you can absorb with the Oni Gauntlet by holding circle. You can then spend these souls at magic mirrors to power up your weapons.
And by power up your weapons, I of course mean power up these 3 first before anything else so you can open these glowing doors that gate your progress.
You're required to open all of these glowing doors before you can fight the final boss, and you don't get nearly enough souls to power up everything just by running through the game normally, so you know what that means. Grinding! In a 4-hour-long game! It isn't a huge deal, as you don't need to max out every weapon, but it does make the game much easier, especially if you're going for some of the side content like the Dark Realm, the endgame bonus dungeon that grants you the strongest weapon in the entire game.
Think the Ultima weapon from Kingdom Hearts, except way less cool.
The puzzles in this game range from baby easy mode to absolutely demonic. There are trick treasure boxes that make you solve number puzzles to receive a reward. These aren't so bad, which is great, considering that they give you some of the most useful upgrades in the game, like the bow and the various armor upgrades. However, there's also sections like this slide puzzle that I absolutely hate. I have never liked slide puzzles, let alone one on a time limit where the punishment for failing is an excruciating death by drowning. This is an anxiety nightmare! Overall, this game is very linear. It mostly consists of running through hallways, getting into slobber knockers with all sorts of different enemy types, and trying really hard not to die. Health items are extremely limited, and most of your progress will rely on your skill alone. Or, in my case, the Joestar secret technique of running away. Yeah, just like classic Resident Evil, you can skip most fights by just running around the enemies. These demons may have kidnapped a princess in order to instigate the destruction of the entire world, but asking them to move any faster than this? Not possible. Sorry. That isn't to say you can just avoid combat entirely. Dino Crisis may have been Resident Evil with dinosaurs, but it at least still had guns. Onimusha takes away the guns in favor of something infinitely cooler, the blade. By progressing through the game, you'll unlock a multitude of weapons. There's a katana that lets you harness the power of electricity, a broadsword imbued with the power to burn everything alive, a naginata that is absolutely broken with this tornado special attack, and the most honorable of weapons, a rifle.
So they didn't get rid of all the guns.
I will say that this game is definitely lacking a little bit in terms of combat variety. This is not a Devil May Cry style action game or something with a wide selection of different combos. You have a basic 4-hit combo that, in 90% of cases, will get the job done just fine. Instead, combat in this game is more about positioning. By holding R1, you can lock onto the closest enemy and strafe around them by pressing any direction. This move alone is key to winning most boss fights in this game. Almost every enemy attack can be dodged, which opens up a window for your 4-hit combo or your special attacks. There's one other combat technique that I would be remiss not to mention, the Isen.
Also known as the bane of my existence because I'm really bad at doing it.
By hitting the attack button right before an enemy attack lands, you'll perform a counterattack that does a whole boatload of damage. It usually insta-kills most enemies and grants you extra souls as a reward. On top of that, there's also the Deflect Isen, which is done by blocking an enemy attack right before it lands, then hitting attack. I gotta admit, 99% of the Isens I managed to pull off are by complete accident. Most of the time I end up missing the timing and eating complete shit, even when I really lock in and try my hardest to nail the timing. It doesn't help that the timing is completely different for each enemy and boss in the game, so to land an Isen consistently is more just time and memorization than anything else. I may be a giant nerd, but even I don't feel like spending hours learning these timings like some of the true gods at this game can do. While Kaede is a nothing character in the story, her gameplay segments are at least a nice break in the action. She has less health than Samanosuke, and she has a harder time killing demons until you get her stronger weapon. But she runs way faster than he does and can do some sick ninja flips. Now, is she out here pulling some Ryu Hayabusa type shit? No, but it's fun nonetheless. She also gets quite a few areas of the map completely exclusive to her. Capcom could have very easily just had her run through the same levels you already did, but no, they went the extra mile, and I appreciate that. One thing that may hard filter a lot of new players are the ways in which this game shows that it's a 2001 PlayStation 2 game.
If you've got a violent aversion to tank controls, well, stay far away from this game.
You need to get used to turning Samanosuke like his shoes are made of cement every single time you want to turn. I personally didn't find the controls to be much of an issue, but I know that some people recoil in fear whenever tank controls are mentioned at all, so I figured I'd mention it. On top of that, there are no autosaves. If you die, and trust me, you will, it's back to your last save point. Make sure to save often, kids. It saves your sanity. However, there's one area of this game that really pisses me off, and that's the boss fights. Some of them, like this big hammer guy, and ironically the final boss, I think are actually just fine. They provide a bit of a challenge while not being too frustrating. But then some of the other ones are just aggravating. The bug Genma Hecuba is a real pain in the ass. Her gimmick is that she can fly around the arena, making her hard to land attacks on. On top of that, she summons a bunch of minions that can swarm you all at once, and Samanosuke is not exactly competent at fighting more than one enemy at the same time. The fight is easier with prodigious use of your special attacks and the honorable gun, but it's still pretty tough. However, that pales in comparison to this asshole, Marcellus. Now, I will admit, in retrospect, most of my issues with this fight are just skill issue. It's actually not so hard once you know how to do the specific Isen timing that makes him a total cakewalk. But I didn't know how to do that until I looked it up for this playthrough. So before that, I spent 2 hours fighting this guy, most of which was spent watching the same unskippable cutscene over and over and over, because this game is from 2001 and it doesn't have a cutscene skip. And let me just say, I never want to hear this goddamn dialogue ever again in my life. I'm okay, I swear. So why exactly do I like playing this game so much? I will admit that it's kind of hard for me to put into words. I think there's just something inherently satisfying about a short, simple, replayable game that has fun combat and a map that's large enough to be interesting while still being small enough to easily memorize. It's the same reason I enjoy games like Luigi's Mansion, Signalis, and most Resident Evil games. It's very satisfying without being overcomplicated, and it doesn't overstay its welcome due to its short runtime. That's something I've learned to appreciate more and more as I get older and games get longer and more complicated. Sometimes you really do just want gaming comfort food where you can smack demons in the face with a big sword, and that's what Onimusha provides for me. I think what also helps the game stick out in my mind is the general vibe and atmosphere. Being a survival horror kinda game that was technically developed in the late 90s for the PS1, this game features pre-rendered backgrounds for every single camera angle. I have always been a lover of pre-rendered backgrounds. You cannot convince me that this game would somehow look better or be more atmospheric if all of these backgrounds were rendered at runtime on the PlayStation 2 of all things. The different camera angles and shot compositions the designers were able to pull off can lead to some truly beautiful sights. They're also able to go in the complete opposite direction and make the more gruesome scenes even more detailed than they ever could have done in full 3D at the time. Also helping the atmosphere is the game's soundtrack, composed by Takashi Nigaki. Now, the game may tell you on the title screen that it was composed by Mamoru Samuragochi, but that's just the game gaslighting you. Psst! If you didn't know, Mamoru Samuragochi was a composer who pretended to be deaf to make himself more famous. What a dick! Anyway, bye. All of the music has a very Japanese flair, as is to be expected with the setting. flutes, shamisen, and taiko drums are all over the place, and it really helps with immersing you in the setting. Many of the songs are less melodic and more moody and chaotic, which really contributes to the dark and gloomy atmosphere the entire game revels in. At the same time, there are a lot of really gorgeous pieces that create a super dreamlike vibe like this. Overall, it's a real hidden gem of a soundtrack. Not all of it is worth listening to outside of the game, but when it's used for the intended purpose, it works super well. But while we're on the topic of audio, let's talk about the dubs for a moment. The English dub for this game is the funniest goddamn thing ever made. I played this game in both Japanese and English, and I can tell you that these are almost completely different experiences. What the hell are some of these line deliveries?
The time has come, demons! Prepare for the dark ceremony!
This trend continues into the second game, and believe me, we'll get to that game eventually. Overall, I'd be lying if I said that Onimusha is some special hidden gem of a game. It really honestly isn't. However, I still think it deserves to be remembered alongside its Resident Evil and Dino Crisis cousins. This game pushes that classic Resident Evil formula to its absolute limits and is one of the last gasps of that entire style of game. They quite literally do not make games like this anymore outside of the indie space, and definitely not to this scale. You've got to remember that at this point in gaming history, the gaming landscape, and Capcom especially, was moving away from this kind of game. Pre-rendered backgrounds, fixed camera angles, tank controls, all of these were going out of style, and yet here's Onimusha showing that you could still do interesting and fun games with these elements. The sequels gradually move away from the framework that this game set down. There are more varied levels, new gameplay systems, and far better production values. For all intents and purposes, I should like those games more. But at the same time, there's just something charming about this original little game from 25 years ago. With fun combat, solid exploration, really nice music, and really hilariously bad voice acting. When I first played this game, I ended up playing through all of it in a single night. I was in a really bad spot in my life and I needed something that would cheer me up, and this game provided that in spades. That experience has stuck with me years later. Here's hoping Way of the Sword ends up being good after all. At least it's keeping the tradition of having questionable English voice acting.
And you can bring as many friends as you want.
Oh, good.
I can't wait!